Right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us for our first live Q&A session for Royston Master Plan. First, I'm going to introduce myself before handing over to some colleagues to talk you through details at Master Plan. So I'm Stacey White and I'm a Spatial Planning Project Manager at Barnsley Council. The Council produced its Master Plan and we've commissioned the services of Arup and Gillespie's just really want to say we appreciate you taking the time to join us and we hope that you find the session useful. Remember, no questions a daft one. Please feel able to ask us anything about the master plan and we'll do our best to assist. Thank you. So Katie, over to you.
Right, thank you. So my name is Katie Sutton, so I'm a stakeholder engagement and consultation specialist. I'm just going to talk through the ground rules for the session and just talk through the technology as well if you're unfamiliar with Microsoft Teams. So all attendees are muted during the live Q&A. There will be a Q&A panel discussion following the presentation. To participate, you can ask questions using the Q&A panel, which is on the right side of your screen. In the task, and if you just hover over the bottom of your screen, there's a task bar with a little question mark. And if the Q&A panel isn't popped up already, then just click on that little question mark and it should pop up the Q&A. And you can choose to post the questions anonymously by selecting Post Anonymous. Any questions that use inappropriate language will not be answered. And due to GDPR, I'd ask you not to record the session yourself. The event is being recorded and it will be available on the Royston webpage after the event. If there's any technical issues, just please exit and rejoin. That tends to solve most of the problems that you experience with Microsoft Teams. If you have any issues that persist, just please drop a note in the chat and we'll try and get that sorted. If you require any further information following the Q&A, please email the master planning email for Barnsley. And I just encourage you guys to ask questions. This is your time to ask questions to the project team. And you can start asking those questions as soon as you want. And we'll also send up a follow-up email to all the attendees, providing a short summary of our discussion today. And then just moving on to the team members that we have on the call today. Of course, Stacey, who's just introduced herself. She's the Barnsley Council Project Manager. And then we've got Millie on the phone as well, and she's the Assistant Project Manager from Arup. And then Susie is Transport, and then Chris as well on Urban Design. And I'll hand over to Chris, who's going to talk through some of the master plan.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Before I start going into the detail of the master plan framework, I'll start by introducing the placemaking principles for the Royston master plan. There are 8 key placemaking principles for this new development in Royston. The first one is, as you can see, design quality and local character. This new development should be designed to high quality that will reflect the local character of Royston and also the surrounding landscape. The second principle, not by order, is sustainable and active travel. It is a key layer of the development to ensure secure landscapes active travel routes are in place to connect with Royston as well as the surrounding countryside. That would also include the Transpennine Trail as well, which is nearby. The next principle is facilities and local hub. We all consider this very important to provide new facilities such as primary school, neighborhood parks, and a new local hub, including a new small local shop within the master plan. And the next principle is landscape and open space. There will be a new park at the heart of each neighborhood within the new developments, and that would include new trees, green space, and also children's play area for all. The next principle is housing mix and neighborhood. It is essential for the development to provide a diverse mix of housing types and tenures for all. That would also include affordable homes. And sustainability and carbon zero is also a key principle. We aim to maximize clean energy alternative for this new development and also minimum carbon consumption. Deliverability and viability for new house, other facilities within the site is also essential. Last but not least, engagement and stewardship. We want to make sure that green space and grow gardens within the new developments are all well taken care of by the community. We highly promote and encourage local initiative as well as stewardship towards this development. Over to the next slide, Millie.
Thanks, Chris. So this is an extract from the public consultation document, and we've tried to highlight some of the constraints and opportunities that are particular to this site. Just to pick a couple of things up, the topography of the land, the lie of the land, means we get some surface water ponding on parts of the site, which is a great opportunity for us to try and use more sustainable drainage to make sure that we reduce the risks to neighbouring communities and the site in terms of flood risk. There's been an identification of lack of high quality green space and recreation areas, and we're using this as another great opportunity to create high quality spaces and provide better green space, which we'll go through later on. Again, there is opportunities to create better bus links along Lee Lane and for the new development, which will then help serve the rest of the community, and better connected public rights of way. We want to make sure that there's appropriate buffers to create a defined boundary with the green belt, and make sure that the potential effects on the landscape, because of the flat lay of the land, is we're trying to make sure that we're considering these in the design as well. Chris, do you want to carry on about the urban design, please?
Sure. Let me request control. Yeah. So this diagram shows the latest master plan framework for the sites. To start off by introducing the framework, I think it's key to point out where Lee Lane is. It will still remain as the key vehicular connection into the sites. And we are aiming to improve the overall experience of Lee Lane by, first of all, downgrading the traffic and also providing landscaped pedestrian and cycle routes on both sides of Lee Lane. Also, there will be a new local hub proposed, which includes a small new local shop as indicated in the local plan. There will also be a new primary school located here, as I'm pointing out. Also, a new informal recreational open space right next to the primary school. All these community facilities will be very close to the existing allotments as well. There would also be new neighborhood parks in light green, as you can see, which would include grow gardens as well as some play areas for children. Barrett's Homes scheme, which is currently under construction, is located here. And it's very much engaged as part of the master plan. The rest of the sites in light yellow color would be residential area. So this is the basic skeleton of the proposed master plan. If we go to the next slide, please. So the next layer for urban design is various strategies for placemaking. We aim to create a distinctive place in this part of Royston to form a new sustainable neighborhood. As mentioned, Lee Lane will still remain as a key vehicular access. There will be two entry gateways, one to the east, connecting to the Barrett's Home scheme, which is under construction at the moment. And also there will be another gateway to the west, highlighted in yellow dash line. And in pink here, that will be a new community hub, which consists of the new primary school, as well as the new informal recreational open space. And both would be adjacent to the existing allotment area here. And there would also be multiple landscaped corridors. As mentioned, Lee Lane would be improved and enhanced with new landscape, pedestrian and cycle routes. There would also be a new north-south landscape routes to connect the various neighborhood parks in close proximity. In terms of residential elements, various neighborhoods with different densities would be proposed and allocated throughout the site. There will be signature landmark buildings located at key gateways, as well as key focal points. There will be also potential viewing opportunity connections from the development onto the open countryside, for example, here, onto the nearby nature reserve through the disused railway line, as well as to the south, over onto the open fields in the surrounding. Next slide, please. Another layer of placemaking principle and also urban design is character areas. We want to create a very distinctive place for this development instead of a very mundane residential development that is you can find anywhere else in the area. So starting off, we want to create a urban neighborhood that is around Lee Lane, meaning that will be of higher density and also more urban characteristics. There would also be the green neighborhood, which will be around new neighborhood parks here and here. An existing open space to the east, meaning that will be more green and also residential compared to the urban neighborhoods. And the yellow area shows the rural fringe, which are at the outskirts of the development adjacent to the open fields. They will be of lowest densities as well as the most green area of the development. The area in pink would be the community neighborhoods, including the new primary school and also the new informal recreational area, both of which would be next to the existing allotment area as well. So these are all the various character areas that we'll try to achieve and create within the master plan. Over to the next slide, please.
Hi, thank you. So the movement framework is about connecting local communities, providing access to services and amenities for both new residents and existing residents. The movement framework is based on a hierarchy of transport modes, prioritising sustainable travel over vehicles to encourage walking, cycling and using public transport and discourage driving, particularly in the local area. Therefore, safe and attractive pedestrian and cycle connections are at the heart of the proposals for Royston. This slide maps out the existing public rights of way in the local area and the proposed routes through the site. And the scheme aims to connect new routes with the existing surrounding routes. Within the site, we show a number of landscaped active travel corridors for pedestrians and cyclists, shown by the orange dash lines. These provide connections within the site to local surrounding areas, including Royston and Carlton, to surrounding routes, including the disused railway line to the north, where the council are proposing improvements. So the landscaped active travel corridors will be wide, they'll be traffic free, attractive and accessible for all. If we move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so this slide shows the street network. Lee Lane runs through the site and is retained, but with improved pedestrian and cycling infrastructure, bus stops and crossings, and a speed limit reduction, we want to make it a safer, lower speed residential street. The slide also shows an indicative alignment for the proposed Carlton-Royston Relief Road to the south and west. Now, while not forming part of the site's proposals, there is a council desire to deliver it, and it is therefore included as part of the access strategy for the site. So the proposals include a new roundabout junction to the west with the Relief Road and Lee Lane. This will provide access to northern parcels of the site. To the east, there's the roundabout that's recently been constructed for the Barrett's Home site, and that will provide access into the southern parcels of the site. And a separate priority junction between the two roundabouts is to provide further access to the south. There's also a highway connection made to Grange Road in the southeast. Although this might be allow for bus access only to prevent the routes becoming a sort of rat run through the site and surrounding residential streets. So the slide shows potential bus routes through the site, including extending the existing Service 57 along High Street, Lee Lane, through the site and connecting with West End Avenue. This will serve new residents as well as provide improved connections for existing residents in Royston in this area. A future option is for additional bus services along Lee Lane to connect with the wider area and provide better bus services for the area in general. Bus services will loop through the site with regular bus stops provided to provide so that all residents are within easy walking distance of a bus stop. Secondary streets and local accesses will provide access to individual plots and houses. The street network aims to provide access for vehicles, but not direct routes, so that it's not an attractive through route. All streets will be designed with a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit to create safer environments for all users. Thank you. If I'll pass you on to Chris to talk about the landscape proposals.
Sure. Landscape and biodiversity is a very essential layer of the master plan framework. Our key strategy is to retain existing trees and existing wildlife that are currently on the sites, and to enhance and maximize any new open space and green space we're proposing within the master plan. So in this diagram, where you can see the darker green dots and also the darker shade area, is the existing trees and also wildlife areas, which will be retained and enhanced within the master plan. The slightly lighter green area shows the existing hedgerows as well, and also green buffers around the site, which would also be protected, retained, and enhanced. We previously mentioned the Lee Lane enhancement. That would also be carried through in our landscape strategy to propose a very green landscaped active travel routes on both sides of Lee Lane. There will be multiple neighborhood parks being proposed within the master plan. Also, there will be one already that is within the Barrett scheme, which is currently under construction as well. Some of the neighborhood parks would include grow gardens and children's play area for the community. There would also be a new informal recreational area here, right next to the proposed new primary school. Regarding biodiversity, we also aim to deliver a minimum 10% biodiversity net gain within the sites. Over to the next slide, please.
Thanks, Chris. So we're anticipating bringing forwards the development in a series of phases, and the indicative phasing is shown in this diagram. And we've tried to take account of the complex land ownership of the site when doing this. These phases won't be necessarily brought forward sequentially as to the numbers that are shown, but we're just trying to group together potential sections of the site. and they'll be dependent on the available infrastructure. So we'll be building out from the road and trying to build the school, for example, initially to provide facilities for everyone. Thank you. And Katie, if you can.
Right, so I think you guys are probably all aware, but this is just a reminder for you guys. The consultation period is live and it closes on Wednesday, the 15th of July. The questionnaire is available online on the Royston website, and any questions you guys have can be emailed to the master planning email inbox. And I think that's it. So we'll go ahead and get started now with the live Q&A. So just a reminder of the team members that are available to help answer your questions. We've got the Barnsley Council project manager. We do have some transport and highways help as well. And then Millie is there to answer any questions. She's the project manager, the assistant project manager. Susie is transport, and then Chris is urban design. And then there's just a few reminders at the bottom about how you can ask questions. So I think I'll go ahead and get started, and I'll read out the questions, and then I'll direct those to a panel member. So starting from the top with the most recent, starting from the least recent, I guess you could say, has the plan included accommodation to support the healthcare needs of the new community? Stacey, is that something that you'd be able to answer?
Yeah, sure. So council worked with infrastructure providers throughout local plan process to determine whether there was sufficient capacity within the existing infrastructure or whether new facilities are needed, for example. So we've been working closely with Barnsley Clinical Commissioning Group to determine whether there were new GP surgeries needed, not just for Royston, but for the wider area. Now, I suppose difficulty is that it's not the council's responsibility to deliver GP practices, but obviously we need to ensure that when sites come forward that they do so with the appropriate infrastructure in place to support that growth. So it's really important throughout the local plan and afterwards, as these sites come forward, that we continue to work closely with CCG to make sure that they're aware of the development and the potential timings of that development, and also that they feel that they're able to plug any identified gaps that there is. Obviously, capacity of GP surgeries is a concern that we tend to get frequently throughout these consultations, and you know, it's something that every one of us faces as an issue when you're trying to get a GP appointment. So it's something that we are keen on resolving if there are any issues, and we'll continue to try and do that. But I think ultimately it's up to the NHS to plug any gaps. I think it's also important to note that Barnsley on the whole, that the CCG have delivered quite a few new surgeries across the borough. So I think the general perception from CCG is that it's not necessarily a facilities issue, and that there's sufficient infrastructure in terms of GP surgeries, but they appreciate that as obviously populations expand, that the number of GPs present within the surgeries maybe needs to expand to facilitate that. So, like I say, it's something that we'll just continue to work with CCG on.
Great, thanks, Stacey. Moving on to the next question. So a lot of people who live locally don't feel fully consulted. Many people I've spoken to today on West End Avenue and Grange Road knew nothing at all about the plan. Please, can you advise what you are doing to engage with residents who are shielding and who may not have access to the internet? Thanks, Sarah. That's a really good question. And in light of the current pandemic, it's important that we continue with project delivery and the associated consultations, but it's also equally important to ensure consultations are accessible to everyone. Our approach, we've worked quite hard with Barnsley Council to develop an approach that involves a combination of traditional and digital techniques tailored to what works best for the stakeholder groups and the local community we're aiming to reach. And it's it's all about ensuring that we're taking a best effort approach to engaging people with the project. So some of the things that we've done, while we're not able to hold physical drop-in sessions, which originally was the plan, we've put in place a lot of new ways for people to get involved, including these online live Q&As. And we have a series of sessions following this as well. For people who are unable to access these online Q&As, we have a phone number available to request hard copies of all the materials available. And for those people that also can't access those online materials, that we can hold a telephone conversation with them. We also put up posters and leaflets in community facilities around Royston. And we've extended the consultation period from the standard 4-week period for master plans to 6 weeks to allow people the time to review materials. And for those people that had to have hard copies sent, it allows them a bit more time to review those materials. The other thing I'd say, Sarah, is your feedback is really important to us. So if you would like to put that into your feedback form, into your survey, please do provide that to us. Thank you. I hope that answers your question. So I'm going to move on to the next one. So how will you protect the wildlife that live on the fields? This is their home too. Millie, would you like to answer that one? And maybe Chris as well, if you have a bit of input.
Yes, thanks. Thanks, Katie. So we, one of the, as Chris kind of explained earlier in the landscape and biodiversity framework, we are trying to retain as much of the existing green infrastructure as possible. So this is any trees, any hedgerows, etc., that's already present on the site. We're also trying to enhance these features to make sure that we are providing habitats and retaining habitats and making sure that there's connected corridors, green corridors for the wildlife to get through the sites if need be. As part of the drainage, we're looking to create some ponds as well, which will then have native planting on to reduce the risk of flooding, but also this will create more habitats for, and then diverse habitats for ecology and animals in the area. And we already mentioned about creating an accessible landscape and ecology buffer around the development to make sure that we're trying to minimize the impact on the adjacent green belt land, and any planting we do will use native seed mixes, etc. And I think it's also important to note that the developers will be required to achieve at least a 10% biodiversity net gain when kind of bringing forth this development, which will be in line with the Environment Bill, to make sure that we have not just a lot of habitats, but a lot of high quality habitats through the development. I hope that answers the question. I don't know, Chris, if there's anything else you wanted to add.
That's good. Thanks, Millie.
Right, great. Thank you. So the next question is, does the plan include extra provisions for the extra residents' medical needs, like doctors and dentists? I think that's similar to the question Stacey answered a bit earlier, but I'm going to see if Stacey has anything else to add. This is about extra provisions for the extra residents' medical needs, so doctors, dentists, those kinds of things.
Yeah, so Katie, I think I covered it in my earlier response, but dentists would be wrapped up within those conversations with clinical commissioning group, because they're also responsible for delivering dental care as well. So again, the clinical commissioning group will assess basically whether there's sufficient capacity within existing dentists within the area, and if there's not, then they're responsible for expanding that provision. So again, it's about continuing that dialogue with CCG so they know when this development's coming forward.
Great, thanks, Stacey. So the next question, what safeguards are you intending to put in place within the master plan to safeguard triggers for the provision of infrastructure and supporting services? Stacey, are you okay with that one, or shall I ask, is that one for Chris?
Sorry, I didn't catch that, Katie. Can you just repeat it?
Yeah, so what safeguards are you intending to put in place within the master plan to safeguard triggers for the provision of infrastructure and supporting services?
Yeah, so I think Millie might be able to build on this response, but I think within a master plan framework, you would expect it to be clear about what type of infrastructure is required to support the quantum of development that's proposed, and also the anticipated phasing of that. So if you take the school, for example, we've sort of got a broad idea about when the school places would be needed based on live birth rates that the Education Authority actively monitor. But also we've got sort of an anticipated build out rate for the development. So how many houses we expect to come forward in any given year across a certain time frame. And within that, we sort of make an estimate of how many children is likely to be generated from that. So a combined sort of factor of that would be, right, when do we need the school based on that information? So it might be year 5 of the development, for example. So what you would expect is that the master plan framework will set out clearly based on us understanding today when that school's likely to be needed to be delivered. So the master plan framework needs to be clear about when that needs to be delivered and the methods used to deliver it, whether that be what funding will be utilised, whether it'll be from the developer, for example, or whether there's any other alternative funding streams that we would expect to explore. But Millie, you might have something to add to that.
Thanks, Stacey. Yeah, I think just building on that, what we're looking at currently in terms of the phasing and delivery is in more detail about what, like Stacey mentioned, what infrastructure you need in order to bring certain plots forward. So when we're putting together the phasing strategy, it's trying to identify which plots would be able to be brought forwards because they have access to highways, because they have access to services, making sure that everything fits together. Yeah, and I don't know if there's any more information needed to answer that question.
Cool. Okay, thanks, Millie. So the next question is from Sarah. Have you considered how much traffic 2,000 people will bring to Lee Lane? Susie, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, certainly. As part of developing the master plan framework, we haven't sort of looked in detail at traffic generation. I'd say the principle for development here was established through the local plan, and as part of the local plan process, traffic modelling of all allocated sites was done to confirm sort of overall feasibility of this site, amongst others. We will be, as part of any planning application that comes forward, there will be a requirement to do much more detailed transport assessment and look at these, you know, the potential traffic impact. I would highlight that, you know, while there will be a traffic impact as a result of building houses, you know, what this master plan aims to do is provide options to encourage access by sustainable modes rather than cars, you know, particularly local trips to, you know, schools and to shops and things. You know, if there are good pedestrian and cycle routes, then people have those options. And, you know, we'll work with the council and bus operators to, you know, encourage and improve bus services to the site, as well as, you know, the wider Royston area as well. So I hope that answers, you know, there has been some initial modelling and there will be more detailed traffic modelling to be done.
Thanks, Susie.
Okay.
Okay, the next question. What are you planning to, from Sarah, what are you planning to put next to the primary school where it says low residential density? Chris, would you answer that one, please?
Yes, sure. Can we go to the next slide, maybe, where it shows the master plan framework again? Yes, so I think the question is referring to this area. If you can see my mouse, that would be proposed as a low density residential area. So meaning there will be dwellings. We don't know exactly what type of homes or tenures per se yet at this stage, but it will be, we're looking to very much extend the existing residential area to the east, very much in a similar fashion into the master plan. And also on the other side of the primary school, it would also be residential neighborhoods as well. And again, I think we would ensure that we are putting in the right housing types and also housing mix, right density as well in that region of the master plan. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, next question. What about all the extra traffic that will be coming and going through the village, especially if the plan goes ahead with all the work vehicles? The roads are already so busy, especially at peak times. Susie, are you okay to answer that one?
Yes, I think so. I think I sort of covered, that we will have, we will look at the extra, the additional traffic as a result of the development. We will assess the impacts on the local highway, and if highway improvements are required, we will look at what can be implemented. I'm not sure if when you talk about work vehicles, is that if that's people from the dwelling, from the residents going to work, then yes, that's part of our assessment. Potentially, I'm not sure if you mean construction traffic vehicles, but again, we would assess the impacts of those on the local network and make sure we mitigate against any impacts. So I hope that covers that question.
Okay, great. Next question from Sarah. What does higher density and urban characteristics mean, please? Chris, would you like to answer that one?
Yes, sure. I think I would have to, thanks for the question first, I would have to answer both kind of together. I think in terms of urban characteristics, this would be very much specific to the Royston central area around the high street, for example, where it's showing the most kind of urban character within the central area of Royston. And usually in the central area of a town like Royston, it would show a higher density of residential. And we would very much use that as a reference to refer back into the master plan. So when we talk about high density within the master plan, it's not going to be a density that is foreign or that is not applicable within the development in comparison to its context. It would be very much in reference to Royston Central area and also the surrounding context of Lee Lane as well. I hope that answers your question.
Great, thanks. I'm just going to scroll back up to where we were. So, right, on to the next one. What percentage of the development is allocated for affordable housing? Stacey?
Yeah, sure. So policy H7 of the Barnsley local plan sets a percentage affordable housing for each housing market area. So it differs depending on which housing market area the site's within. So for this site, it sits within the North Barnsley and Royston market area. So percentage that will be sought based on today's assessment is 10%. Now, when we go through local plan review in future, it might be that the assessment determines that actually we need to seek a higher percentage or a lower percentage based on that assessment at the time. Because these sites are so significant and, the build out rate is going to be over quite a prolonged period. It might mean that changes over the time of the development, because you're not just going to get one planning application that covers the entire site. The policy is what it is at the minute, which, like I said, is policy H7, and that sets it at 10%.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. I hope that answers your question. The next question, will the improved pedestrian and cycle routes extend along the full length of Lee Lane? Susie, I'll hand that one to you.
Thank you. I think at the moment the proposed pedestrian and cycle routes sort of extend along Lee Lane within the extent of the site, as shown on the master plan. There may in the future be potential to sort of discuss, off-site highway improvements, which would include cycle and pedestrian routes, but that would be a sort of level of detail to look at going forward.
Okay. Next question, what about all the green space you are going to be destroying to make way for all these houses? Public footpaths that have been around for decades that hundreds of people use. Chris, would you be able to talk a bit about the open space and how, yeah, go on.
Yes, thanks for the question. We are aware of, obviously, by proposing new housing, there will be loss of open space. But again, I think going back to the local plan, there's already a published supplementary planning documents on open space provision, and we are very much providing more than what that document is guiding, which is 15% of the development area to be open space. We are very much keen on providing more than that minimum percentage, and wherever we are providing open space, it will be very high quality, well-designed landscaped area. We aim to retain and enhance biodiversity, as Millie has explained earlier. And also these open space won't be just a broad grass area. It would also include grow gardens for community, informal play area for the community, as well as children's play area as well. So we are actually diversifying the offer to the community. And in terms of the public rights of way, let me request control. I think we are retaining and enhancing as public rights of way as they are on the sites. I'm aware that there is a public rights of way to the immediate south of the sites, which we are very much looking to retain and enhance and engage. And also there is an existing bridle way that connects from the allotment cutting through the southeast portion of the site. We are also aiming to enhance and improve. As discussed, we will be providing new connection along Lee Lane, north and south part of Lee Lane, not just pedestrian, but also cycle routes as well. And we are also looking to provide new north-south connection, connecting neighborhood parks as well. And regarding the surrounding public rights of way along the disused railway line to the north, we are not only not neglecting it, but very much engaging it and working with the council on strategizing the rights enhancement plan for it. And also there will be various public rights of way pedestrian cycle connections to the south as well. So I don't think there will be a concern in terms of not providing enough pedestrian cycle connection, and definitely not omitting existing public rights of way within the site either. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. The next question comes from Steve. What did the detailed transport modelling indicate the impact of traffic would be on neighbouring villages? That's a great question, Steve. We have a member of the Barnsley Council Highways team. He's going to be joining the transport session coming up in a couple of weeks. So I would encourage you to join that session if you're able to, and that would be a question that would be answered by him. And if you're unable to make that session, if you could just email that into the master planning inbox, and we will get a reply out to you. Moving on to the next question. Hi, what plans have you put in place in terms of wraparound care for extra schools? For the extra school, Stacey, that one, please.
Yeah, sure. So I've actually had an inquiry into master planning mailbox from a local provider that's worried about sort of continued security tenure, I guess, for their existing facilities. And as a parent, obviously, it's something that when you're working, you need that wraparound care. So I can fully appreciate that. I think it's something that we probably need to explore within the school provision, because quite often within schools you get community rooms or an extension at school through a community facility that then could provide that wraparound care within that facility. Obviously, it wouldn't be up to Education Authority to provide that, and the school will actually be run by a multi-academy trust rather than Education Authority in any case. But obviously, I'd encourage people to feed that sort of thing through the survey response if they feel strongly about it, because then we can actively seek to build in that community provision within that community hub on the site to make sure that there's facilities available, and there's certainly policies within local plan that seek to support those community uses on sites like this. So it's something that we would be able to support.
Great. Okay. Next question. How much longer until we get started? I can give a brief overview of timescales. So after this consultation, we'll do some work to finalise the master plan with a view to sending it to the Cabinet in late 2020 for approval. Stacey, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, just that when the report's submitted to Cabinet and then progresses on to full council for approval, it'll include a document to set it as it's called a statement of community engagement, which will essentially basically include the feedback that we've received via this consultation and set out how the master plan is evolved to take account of that feedback that we've received.
Okay, next question. The current speed limits through Royston are not adhered to. What steps do you propose to enforce the limits? So I guess this is a question about the existing speed limits. Is that something that we can answer, Stacey? Susie?
Yeah, I was going to jump in here and say that in terms of the existing speed limits within Royston, it's not really something we can answer at this stage. That might be something that council officers can pick up. But in terms of the design of Lee Lane and the speed limit there, it's all about the design and to encourage drivers to, not enable them to drive fast. So the introduction of new roundabouts, new junctions, pedestrian crossings, the landscaping, the buildings, the residential properties sort of facing the road themselves will all help to encourage drivers to reduce their speeds.
Okay. Next question. The master plan indicates that the signalisation of the Lee Lane Wakefield Road junction will be carried out under the proposals by Bellway. So what's the fallback position within the master plan if this is not implemented?
Yeah, shall I pick up on that one as well? Yeah, I think if the Bellway development doesn't come forward and therefore the junction improvements don't come forward as part of any planning application for the wider, this site, then we will need to look at the operation and the impact at that junction, and similarly, junction improvements may well be required, and they would have to be implemented either as part of this master plan or any development that comes forward on the site.
Okay. Next question comes from Sarah. So how can they ring the number if they don't know anything about it? So I think this comes a bit from an earlier question about the consultation approach. And what I would say is that we did a letter drop to residents living within a specific zone, and that provided a phone number. We also did publicity in terms of we put a notice in the Barnsley Chronicle. There are some site notices up, and I would say the phone number is also available in the posters and leaflets. So there's a few ways to find out about the phone number and also to find out about the consultation activity. We also have we've been pushing out the events and the consultation on social media through Barnsley Council, Twitter and Facebook. So hopefully, I hope that answers your question. Moving on to the next one. Will the various character areas be subject to individual design codes? Chris, is that one for you?
Yes, sure. Thanks for the question. It's a good question. First of all, the character areas that I described earlier isn't a principle that is foreign to the development or the surrounding area. It's very much the Lee Lane, which is the extension of Royston Central area, and its surrounding green neighborhoods. For example, it's the neighborhoods where there is a neighborhood park located within, and the rural fringes are very much at the outskirts of the development where they are facing directly onto the green belts or onto the open fields. So all these character areas are very much intrinsic to its surrounding context. And regarding the design code, yes, we are in progress on in terms of compiling, producing this design code, which would help shaping the details and the ingredients of these character areas within the developments in terms of, for example, housing types, mix, materiality, landscape, open space, streetscape, etc. All these ingredients would help shaping these different characters within the new developments. And hopefully this document will be used to guide future planning applications as well. I hope that answered that question.
Okay. So Steve Hunt's question, how many residents in Royston will he be informing of this master plan consultation by traditional means? So by post, that was, we issued a letter to residents and businesses living within 250 meters of the site boundary. So this is in excess of 700 properties. And then the Barnsley Chronicle as well notice. Going to move on to the next question from Sally. Can you please advise if the sewer system will be improved as the current land is often flooded? Millie, I think this is one for you. Millie, you're on mute, sorry. It looks like you're just struggling a bit with the sound. Want to try again?
Yep, can you hear me now?
Yeah, great.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the constraints section earlier, we are aware that because of the partly because of the flat nature of the land and the ground conditions, there is some surface water ponding and flooding on parts of the site. As part of the development, any developers will need to make sure that the development doesn't increase flood risk to other areas and that there is no flooding on the sites that they develop. So currently the drainage strategy is to discharge the water into the ground where that's possible. That's depending on more surveys and if not nearby watercourses. The strategy also means that we have to capture the surface water where it falls and use surface ponds and underground crates to slow this water down from the development before it gets discharged, which means that it's less likely to be big storms coming and creating flooding. But the main thing is that the development, the strategy means the development will not release any more water than is currently being released into the existing watercourses. BNBC have already done some early work to develop this strategy, but as the developers bring their land forward, still need to do more detailed ground investigations and surveys, and the strategy is trying to set out a framework for them to continue doing the design for the drainage. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Millie. Moving on to the next question. So from Steve, what proportion of residents has it been assumed will commute by active travel versus public transport versus car? Susie, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, hi there. I would say at this stage we've not sort of undertaken that detailed assessment of the proportions by the different modes. It will certainly be a part of the more detailed transport assessment, which will cover all the modes, as well as a travel plan that would be required to accompany any planning application, which would actively promote the sustainable modes of travel. I can refer to the 2011 census journey to work data for the area, which shows that about 75–80% people travelling by car, and then 8% public transport and about 10% walking and cycling. So that's a starting point from 2011. So we would obviously seek to be increase the modes, the sustainable travel modes, and reduce that car mode share. It probably leads on to the next question about sustainable travel as an aspiration. However, in reality, the favoured mode is the single car use. And I would agree, while we can, do as much as we can for the site to encourage local trips, in particular by walking and cycling, and we can encourage bus access into the site. In reality, a lot of people will be driving for, particularly for work, for longer distances. So yes, we will do more detailed assessment, and clearly the junction of Wakefield Road and Lee Lane is already of concern, and we will look at it as part of more detailed assessment.
Great, okay, thank you, Susie. From Sally, the low density area to Chris, right next to the school, are there any plans to support grazing residents to relocate? Stacey, is this potentially one for you, or shall I hand it to Chris?
Yeah, I can respond to that. Council are not acting as a lead developer on this scheme, so it would be up to landowners whether there's tenancy agreements in place to one, notify any tenants that there were an intention to either sell the land for residential or otherwise, but it wouldn't be something that the council itself would get involved with in terms of seeking alternative provision, for example.
Okay, thanks. Next question. So where will the proposed road join to Carlton, and how will this impact the existing traffic in Carlton along Royston Lane? So is this question particularly about the relief road? Yeah. Susie, would you like to answer it? And maybe I think it might be one as well that could be asked in the transport session in a couple of weeks, or emailing that into the inbox. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, where will the proposed road join to Carlton, and how will this impact the existing traffic? Well, no, we've shown the alignment in this area. I'm afraid I don't know the detail of how it will join in Carlton. So I think it's something to pick up once we've got highways officers from the council with us.
Okay.
Sorry.
Nope, that's fine. Thank you. Next question from Sarah. Would you reconsider any aspects of the master plan, in particular leaving some green space on the land immediately behind West End Avenue before houses are added? Chris, I'm going to hand that one over to you.
Thanks for the question, first of all. And for the first part of your question, yes, we would definitely consider your comments, which is the reason why we're having the consultation at the moment. We take all the comments on board and very seriously review the progress of the master plan. And regarding your suggestion of green space immediately behind West End Avenue, I suppose it's this area. The reason why we are connecting residential element directly to that area is because those are actually all back gardens at the moment, and we thought it would be a good urban design best practice to extend that residential plots by possibly connecting to another row of back garden as well, and then continue on with developments. But if there's a strong reason why you think we need to include some green space in that area, we would definitely consider. And if you can leave us your comments as well through email or any other ways, that will be fine. Hope that answers your question.
Great, okay. Next question. People who already live in the village can't walk from bottom of school lane to get to school, so I don't think they will be thinking about walking or cycling from Lee Lane to the local shops or schools. That's just wishful thinking on our part, or trying to cover up the fact that the traffic through the village will be tenfold. I thank you for your comment, and I would encourage you to also put that into your feedback. Does anybody else want to comment on this comment?
I think I would just reiterate that, you know, we can't make people walk or cycle. But if we create, you know, the right environment, we can encourage it. I think, you know, we've seen from the impact of COVID-19 and the reduction in people driving and more people out on the walking and cycling on streets that are quieter. So if we've got quieter, safer, traffic-free pedestrian and cycle routes, we're doing, you know, what we can to encourage people to walk or cycle. But obviously, yes, we can't force people to. In terms of the traffic through the village, I'm not sure it'll be a tenfold increase, but we will do, you know, traffic modelling has been done as part of the local plan to sort of determine the feasibility of the principles. And we will be doing more traffic modelling as the scheme's developed. I hope that answers that.
Great, thank you. Next question from Sally. What is the time frame for this plan if agreed? And then when would the build begin? I think we discussed a bit about the time frame. Do we have a definitive answer really on when the build would begin? Stacey?
Yeah, so it all depends when the planning applications come in following the adoption of the master plan framework. So in our local plan, we've got a clear policy requirement to produce a master plan framework in advance of any planning applications being approved on site, and the whole reason for that is to make sure that the full site comes forward in a comprehensive manner, and that we make sure that the right infrastructure is delivered at the correct point in time. So later this year, once we've completed the consultation, reviewed the feedback, revised the master plan, and then submitted it to then that'll be a final meeting to seek approval to adopt.
Right, I think Stacey's connection has just gone out for a second. So we'll continue on. I know we're nearing the end of this session, and I know we started a bit late, so we're just going to extend it by about 5 minutes or so, just to try and answer these last few questions. Hope that's okay with you guys. So on to the next one. So off-site highway improvements should be considered now, not once the master plan is adopted. That way developers know what is expected of them and the residents benefit from having development on their doorstep. Yes, great, thank you for that feedback. Please do submit that. Susie, did you have anything else to add about that?
I mean, just to say again that, you know, the modelling has been undertaken from the local plan. We know that there's a couple of junctions in particular that are sensitive, that are busy now, and will need improvements, and that's the Wells Junction in Royston, and the Wakefield Road and Lee Lane Stagger Junction. So we do, to a certain extent, know where highway improvements will be needed, but obviously, there will need to be more done.
Okay, great. Next comment from Sarah. I live here, there was no letter drop. I think I answered that a bit earlier about the letter drop. It was within 250 meters, and there were about 700 residents and businesses that were sent the letter. I'd also just probably reiterate that there are posters and leaflets in the local area within Royston to help raise awareness. And Sarah, if you'd like to send an email into the master planning inbox as well about this, I'm happy to help answer that a bit more. On to the next one. So open space is fields to walk through with wildlife all around you, not flat green fields with no character. We have several parks already for that kind of open space. What about natural open space? On our feedback form, there is a bit about characteristics we'd like to see, and one of them is about natural open spaces. So please do submit feedback if you haven't already, and you'll be able to tick that as a characteristic. Chris, do you have any comments on this as well?
Sure. Thanks for the question again. I think understand your concern regarding loss of open space. However, this site is an allocated site as published, included in the local plan. And as mentioned, we are very much aiming to provide more than 15% minimum provision of open space within the sites. And we are very much keen to propose a well-designed, well-considered placemaking strategy for the area that allows you to have not only close proximity access to neighborhood parks, but also retaining the surrounding characters of the open countryside if you are in the outskirts of the development. And also there are multiple opportunities for viewing potential into the green space, into the green fields. So it shouldn't be a concern that you feel you have lost open space, but you are very much living around the surrounding open space as well. I hope that helps answering the question. Okay,
and I guess kind of connected onto that, this question about open spaces, green spaces, that support mental health. Any comments on that? Or is this one we can take away potentially, and we can get back to you on that one?
Hey, Katie, just to say really quickly, as part of this work, we're doing a health impact assessment as well, and one of the main considerations when we're doing the master plan is the health and well-being of people. So we're definitely accounting for the fact that green space and open areas are giving help people's mental well-being, which is linked to health, and that will be published as an appendix to the master plan framework as well. So it's definitely been taken into account.
That's great, Millie. Thanks for that. Right, so I realise we probably only have about 2 minutes left, and we've got a couple more questions in. I think Stacey may have just had to leave, and she would have been best to answer this one about what is happening with the Bellway application, given the public inquiry was cancelled as a result of COVID. Yeah, so I'm going to just skip that one, and I'm hoping that Stacey may come back in, but if not, please email that question into the master planning inbox. I'll just scroll back to the slide. The master planning inbox, the email address is just at the bottom of your screen. The dates for the transport meeting and all the other sessions, I'll just run through those real quick. So tonight, obviously, we had the live Q&A session, the main Q&A session. Then we have a series of topical sessions coming up. There's an urban design session on Tuesday, the 30th of June. And just to say, these are all these, you can join all these events on through the Royston website. So urban design is on the 30th of June, starting at 5 p.m. There's a transport session on the 30th of June, starting at 6 p.m. And then there's a landscape and ecology session starting on the 30th of June as well, from 7 p.m. And then there's a few general sessions that will cover whatever questions potentially that we didn't get to today, or any other questions that people may have. And then last question, what assessment has been made in relation to the impact of development on air quality? Millie, Chris, one are you guys able to answer that, or is that something you'd like to take away and we can talk to our air quality specialist?
I think we can respond to that in more detail in a follow-up, but again, air quality is another thing that's being considered as part of the health impact assessment as well, but we can respond to that in more detail once we've got, can get a specialist to help respond to that. Okay.
And then just the last two questions, again about the consultation. I'm happy to talk through the consultation approach again, but I know we're running over now, so please do email that in to the master planning inbox. Happy to respond. Last one, the master plan is on what was greenbelt land and how was it taken out and why. Is there anybody on the call able to answer that question? I know we have an FAQ available on the website about this. The site it's not in greenbelt land prior to being allocated for mixed use development in the local plan. So it means the allocation as part of the local plan means it has been identified for the development. Stacey, are you on the call and able to help answer that question? I think I have covered it. No, it wasn't in greenbelt land, and it wasn't prior to being allocated for mixed use development. So I just want to say thank you guys so much for joining. Really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your evening to come and ask questions and hear a bit more about the master plan. If we didn't get to your question today, please do send an email via the master planning inbox. The consultation period closes on the 15th of July, and there are a series of more sessions, live sessions, where you can ask questions to members of the project team. Those will be running the week commencing the 30th and onwards. Thank you very much.